Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my early thoughts and transfer plans for Game Week 13, where I'll take an early look at my team for the upcoming game week and some of the players that I might be considering bringing in. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, before we look ahead to Game Week 13, let's briefly review Game Week 12 and let me know at the time of you watching this, how many points are you on? Of course, there is one game to go on Monday evening between Newcastle and West Ham, but I have no players in that game. As much as I would love to have Alexander Isak, I don't. So I am all out with 66 points, which as of right now is enough for a small green arrow, which feels very strange given every player in my team bar 3 blanked. That normally feels like a week where you would expect a massive red arrow. So I'm very happy that even if Isak does go completely nuclear on Monday night, it should still be a small green arrow, which I will absolutely take. But like I said, because so many of my players blanked, it does feel a little bit... It felt like a bit of a failure of a week. And I know I say that with 66 points, and a lot of you have probably got a lot worse out there if you don't have the likes of Salah and Cunha. But it just felt very strange because so many of my players that I had high hopes for were very disappointing, including Palmer and Haaland. And the big thing about my team is that I'm able to get Salah, Palmer and Haaland in. And so for two of them to blank, and obviously Saka to do very well, who's the other premium that you can own instead, it did feel like it was going to be a really bad week. But to my surprise, the rank's not doing too badly. So let's very briefly go through the team and how they performed. I had Sanchez in goal. This is an interesting one, right? Because Sanchez has been pretty terrible. He was at fault for a lot of the chances that Chelsea actually gave up. But if you take a look at the XG conceded, Chelsea are actually the best in the league for Game Week 12 for non-penalty expected goals conceded. They, of course, did concede the penalty. They could have conceded another penalty, to be honest. But if you take away the penalty XG, they didn't actually concede that much from open play, which says a little bit about Leicester. But I also don't think the Chelsea defence is that bad. But they just have those individual errors in them all the time. Like, they give away penalties. They give the ball away at the back. Sanchez is not a particularly good goalkeeper. So as much as I feel a little bit hard done by conceding right at the end, I also don't think that Chelsea are a defence that will keep as many clean sheets as the data would suggest they should. But that being said, I'm still hopeful for some clean sheets in the upcoming period. In the defence, not much to write home about. Of course, a lot of my players blank. So 8 Nuri, we don't own him for the clean sheets, but sadly this week he didn't manage an attacking return. Leif Davis really should have had an attacking return. He set up the lap from like 3 or 4 yards out, if not for a wonderful save by Onana, and also the lap really should have finished that. But Leif Davis, once again, I sit here and say he created a big chance. He should have had more in the game. But 2 points, to be honest, is more than I was probably expecting from him. I had the option of starting Vandenberg or Lewis. I didn't think Lewis would start, and even if he did, I thought Spurs would score, and obviously they got absolutely battered. And then Vandenberg, I just thought that Brentford's defence is so bad, he might get a clean sheet, but if he does, it's a maximum of 6 points, and it was 6 points. So yes, I probably should have started Vandenberg, but that's only a 4-point swing there, and I wasn't really expecting a clean sheet. It just goes to show how bad Everton are. Brentford played most of that second half with 10 men, and Everton didn't really have many chances. Like, they are just really struggling from an attacking perspective. And if you've owned Calvert-Lewin over this period, I really truly do feel for you. Obviously, Arsenal back to their clean sheet ways. I'm very glad they got the clean sheet. That did boost my rank. I'm now sat there thinking, oh, I would quite like to have double Arsenal defence, which is of course the way that you will feel. As soon as the clean sheets start flying in, we're all going to be discussing once again, is it worth having double Arsenal defence? Let's see over a slightly longer period. Let's see if they get a clean sheet against West Ham, and then for slightly trickier games from a defensive perspective, maybe against Man United and Fulham. Again, if they go on a really nice run now, I will probably look to try and bring in another Arsenal defender. But that was the way the defence got on. In the midfield, everyone blanked bar Mohamed Salah. So Rodgers, I was actually really hopeful for Rodgers against Palace. And Aston Villa actually accumulated over 3 XG in this game. But Rodgers just wasn't really involved from an FPL perspective. He had an okay game himself. And Mbeumo, really disappointing. Everton largely managed to stop Brentford from creating too much. We know that Brentford are better at home than they are away, but I was still a little bit more hopeful. And he's actually a genuine captaincy option in Game Week 13 in Mbeumo against Leicester at home, which we'll discuss throughout the week. But I just don't like how wide he's playing. I feel like you're literally captaining at that point a proper winger, whereas in the past, Mbeumo's felt more like an inside forward. So that's my only concern. Cole Palmer, really disappointing. I will just say, that chance that Madueke blocked, in any other world that goes in and he's coming away with a goal and probably bonus points. So do take that into account. If you didn't watch the game, by the way, Palmer had a shot from about 3 yards out, which Madueke was in the goal. He tried jumping out the way, and as he jumped, the ball hit him. So it's not really Madueke's fault. It's not Palmer's fault. It was just one of those things. But in any other world, he comes away with a goal there, and we're talking very differently about it. But Jackson was the star of the Leicester-Chelsea game. And then, yeah, Mohamed Salah. What to say about this? A lot of Liverpool fans were really triggered by what I posted on social media, and I probably should have worded it better. I said he did very little and then came away with a brace. To the point of when he scored the second goal, the penalty, he had done very little from an FPL perspective. The first goal was just McCarthy's terrible keeping. They said it was a fantastic finish on the commentary. I think he tried controlling it and then realised as his heavy touch left his foot that it was going towards the goal. Maybe I'm disrespecting him, but that was just really poor goalkeeping. If McCarthy just stays in his goal, that's not a goal. And then the penalty was just a really silly penalty to give away. It was a needless handball. So yeah, it did feel like, and I'm saying this as a Salah captainer, by the way. I'm not sitting here salty because I didn't captain him. It felt like he did very little to get those 2 goals. But after the brace, Mohamed Salah had 2 huge chances that he should have scored. It almost dropped him off of 3 bonus because he missed 2 big chances. So, I don't know, 28 points feels maybe a little bit fortunate, but with those 2 big chances missed at the end, maybe it's about right. And he just continues to be so involved in everything that Liverpool do. So, yeah, I'm glad that I at least gave him the armband. And then the front line, a bit of a mixed bag. So Raul Jimenez missed a huge chance from 3 yards out, hit the crossbar. It was a terrible miss. He came off on the 72nd minute again. Raul Jimenez has got to go for me. I think we'll discuss in a second. His minutes aren't good. He's not in form. He's not finishing the chances. And I do think with the fixtures coming up, there's just no need to hold him anymore. It's just not it. And there are loads of other really good cheap forwards as well to own. The biggest disappointment was Erling Haaland. And when I look at my team, what is costing me? It's Erling Haaland. Because rather than Haaland and Rodgers, I could have had, if I'd have made the move, I could have brought in Isak for Haaland, who I'm sure, by the way, Isak will do something on Monday night, and then Saka for Diblim. And I discussed it that it felt a week too early, but right now I would immediately already be up like 10, 12 points with Isak still left to play. So it's costing me so much. Even when I don't captain him, having a 15.1 million asset now in my team that's blanking every week. So Haaland, bye-bye. He's got to go. Even if he starts to turn it on now, he's got to be averaging what Salah is. He's got to be averaging 10 points a game, really, for him to justify it. And the thing is, even if he does that, if Saka continues to look good and so does Isak, well, then he might even need to get more than that. And the thing is, you're not captaining over this spell because there aren't any standout fixtures. So yeah, sad to say, I wanted to give Haaland one last go against Spurs, and he had the chances. He missed 2 big chances. He had 4 or 5 shots in the box. It just didn't transpire into points, and he's just struggling at the moment for form and confidence. I thought I would leave the best for last, which is Cunha. I will just apologise. On my deadline stream, I told loads of people that if they had a benching headache, I wouldn't mind benching Cunha this week. And I will openly admit that, because pre-deadline, I didn't think it was a bad decision. Fulham are really good defensively. And actually, if you look at the XG, Wolves only have 1.3 XG. And I know people don't like me honing on about XG, but what that suggests is that actually Fulham didn't concede that many big chances in the game. The other thing to note is because Fulham made 5 substitutions, when Anderson got injured in the 80th minute, they weren't able to bring on a player for Anderson. So they were playing with 10 men, which is when Wolves scored 2 of their goals. So 4-1 isn't, I don't think, representative of the game. Also, no one saw a Cunha 16-pointer against Fulham away coming. It's just a bit of a freak incident. I'm obviously very happy I have him. And if you'd have asked me out of my 7 attackers, who is going to be the lowest scoring attacker for you this week, I would have hands down said Cunha. Honestly. So to be honest, if I'd have brought in someone for Dibbling, I may well have benched Cunha because I just wasn't very confident. But this is the way FPL is. It's so unpredictable. And yeah, 2 goals and an assist. He was unreal. Like so good. And maybe he's just a player that you just don't ever bench now. And I guess with the fixtures coming up, you're probably very unlikely to. So yeah, Cunha absolutely saving the day with Salah. So what that means is 8 of my 11 players blanked, Gabriel clean sheet, and then Salah and Cunha monster hauls. And it's enough for me to come away with a green arrow. So that's how the team did. Let me know how many points you got in Game Week 12. Let's now take a look at Game Week 13. So guys, this is how the team is currently looking without any transfers being made. And I have 3 free transfers and 0.2 million in the bank. So I'm in a very flexible position, and I can definitely foresee myself using at least 2, probably 3 of those. And I have looked at some possible -4 hits as well. I'd like to just do a little bit of surgery to my team. And as we spoke about in that first section, and as you'll probably be advising me, Haaland's got to go. He's got Liverpool away this week. and he is eating up far too much of my budget, and I'm still sat there every week with Dibbling in my team, which means that I can't rotate my attackers as well. So as a result, because Haaland's being sold this week, I do think it makes sense to use at least 2, if not 3 free transfers to not only sell Haaland, but then to redistribute the funds. Because if I just sell Haaland and don't redistribute the funds, then I'm not gaining the benefit of selling him. So yeah, 3 transfers feels very, very likely this week. I'm almost locked into using 3. It's just in what combination and which players do I bring in, which I will discuss. So in terms of the goalkeeper spot, this isn't a particularly good position to be in because I don't like either of them this week, but I will be playing Sanchez against Aston Villa at home rather than Fabianski against Arsenal at home. Something that I've noticed with goalkeepers, and I've been saying it for a while, clean sheets are incredibly unpredictable, and when goalkeepers will have storming games is also very unpredictable. Because often, the games that a goalkeeper will make lots of saves in and maybe get a surprise clean sheet will be the games when you probably wouldn't have wanted to start them. So I'm keen to probably not rotate Sanchez and Fabianski too often. In Game Week 15, Sanchez has Spurs away and Fabianski has Wolves at home. In that 1 week, I might play Fabianski, but generally I'm just going to play Sanchez every week and just hope he can deliver because I don't want to try and predict when Chelsea might keep a clean sheet because you just never know. Like even Ipswich today only conceded the 1 to Man United. That could have been a random clean sheet. These things happen in FPL and football. So yeah, I've not been overly impressed with Sanchez. Chelsea do find ways to concede, but over this spell, over the next, let's say, 8 to 10 game weeks, as long as Sanchez keeps his place, which I don't think is definite, by the way, I'm hopeful that he'll get at least 2 or 3 clean sheets over that spell. With the defence, I'm okay with it for this week, but there are also a lot of defenders that I would rather own than the ones I do have. So Gabriel against West Ham away, absolutely fine. Like I said, very happy to have at least 1 Arsenal defender. The possibility of adding a second in the near future is definitely there. And 8 Nuri, I think Bournemouth will score. They're a very good team. But again, there aren't many other defenders that I love, and he's got that attacking threat, and it's a home fixture. So those 2 I'm pretty happy with. Between the other 3, I've just got to start one of them. I'm obviously not going to start Rico Lewis this week. His minutes are always a bit of a doubt. He's got Liverpool away. He's not even really got much attacking threat, in all honesty, despite him sometimes playing a little bit higher up the pitch. So he's definitely not one I'm looking at starting, which means that if I don't make a defender transfer this week, I basically have to start one of Vandenberg or Leif Davis. I did have Vandenberg in there, but after I made this graphic, actually, Steve Cooper has been sacked by Leicester. So there's going to be a new manager bounce. Let me know if you don't know at the time of you watching this, who you think will come in to manage Leicester. But there are some exciting names being chucked around. Brentford aren't a particularly good defence anyway. Vandenberg carries no attacking threat. I honestly might start Leif Davis again against Nottingham Forest away because he is just... I know Ipswich are so bad, but Leif Davis creates so many chances. He's created the most chances of any defender in the Premier League this season. So considering Forest aren't the best attack in the world, even with Chris Wood, I do wonder if maybe starting Leif Davis might be the better play there. But yeah, that's obviously only if I don't make a transfer. If I do make a transfer, it'll be to sell Rico Lewis, and then I would just start whoever I bring in, because I would assume that it's probably someone like Lewis Hall or a Brighton defender, and then they probably are better than Vandenberg or Leif Davis. But as of right now, no defender transfer is planned, which tells you that I'm planning on 3 attacking transfers this week to just rejig a little bit of the funds and sort out my attack. So in terms of the players that are safe, this week, there are only... I think actually 5 players that are safe. So Mohamed Salah is absolutely fine. At the moment, he's got the armband because Liverpool look pretty good, at least from an attacking perspective. Salah feels inevitable. It's at Anfield, and City are all over the place defensively. And even if De Bruyne does start that game, it doesn't affect them hugely from a defensive perspective. They had players back in this. It's just Rodri. It has to be. Like, the absence of Rodri is massive, and they are really, really struggling. So do I see Liverpool scoring? Yes. Salah's been involved in 67% of Liverpool's goals this season. So yeah, if I see Liverpool scoring a couple, you're imagining that Salah gets involved in at least one of them. So I don't mind the armband on him. 2 of the other players that you could consider are Palmer and Mbeumo, both playing at home, and they are 2 other players that are relatively safe. Palmer, just going to keep for the foreseeable future. He has actually struggled for returns in recent weeks. He's not returning at the same rate, and when we discuss all these premiums we want to own, like from Game Week 19 onwards, I think you're going to want Haaland back. I think you're also going to want Palmer, Salah, Saka, but if there is one to be sacrificed, if Palmer doesn't pick it up a little bit with these fixtures, maybe he is the one that we end up sacrificing. But as of right now, we brought him in for this fixture run. I'm not panicking off the back of one game where, again, if Madueke just moved out the way, Palmer would have a goal. So I'm not too stressed, but I don't know how comfortable I feel giving him the armband. It is probably between him and Salah for me, though. And then in Mbeumo, it's just... I don't like how wide he's playing. Again, he's playing like a winger. He's not getting the same number of big chances. His goal threat is way down this season. I'm going to keep him for the Leicester game. If I'm not impressed by Brentford and Mbeumo in the Leicester game, especially as it's a home game, we know they're much better at the G-Tech. If it's a good game, maybe I'll look to keep Mbeumo beyond. But after that, there are some players like I'd quite like to own Anthony Gordon or Matoma or Semenyo now that he's going to serve his 5 yellow card suspension this week. So there are other midfielders that I'm really interested in. And so I might end up shifting Mbeumo. But for this week, I'm obviously going to keep him. And the other player that is probably fine in the midfield is Rodgers. Like, I don't want to start Rodgers this week. I've got Sanchez. I also think that Chelsea aren't awful defensively. But in terms of selling him, I see absolutely no need to sell Rodgers at the moment. I still think he's fantastic value. And after the Chelsea game, he's got Brentford at home and Southampton at home, which are back-to-back brilliant fixtures. So yeah, Rodgers is absolutely fine in my team for now. But I don't want to start him every week, which means Dibbling is the one that needs to be sold. And this is finally going to be the week where Dibbling leaves my team. I actually thought he was very, very good in Game Week 12, believe it or not. It was actually one of his better performances this season, but he's not a player that I want to start regularly. And also the fixtures coming up are pretty rough. So yeah, Dibbling is finally going to leave my team and we'll discuss where he's moving to. But because I'm going to be shifting Haaland, I can pretty much afford anyone I want in that spot. And so yeah, moving on to the attack, Cunha's the only one I'm happy with at the moment. Bournemouth at home this week, not a great fixture, but we know that in a few weeks he plays against Ipswich and Leicester in consecutive weeks. And that also includes a game against West Ham as well, who've been pretty poor defensively. So I like the upcoming fixtures for Cunha. On the back of a 16-pointer, he can do whatever he wants in my team for Game Week 13, and I will not be complaining because he's absolutely delivered for me. Which leaves Rao and Haaland. And again, I'd like to sell both of these players here. If João Pedro didn't exist, and we'll move on to João Pedro, of course, then Raul, I don't think it's desperate to sell him before Spurs and Brighton. After that, he's got Arsenal and Liverpool, and I do think that you need to sell him at that point. But after that, you had Southampton. So I suppose if you can rotate him out for the few games in sort of 14, 15, then maybe you could keep him. And I don't think he's a rush out for a lot of you. But for me this week with 3 free transfers and with João Pedro sat there, I just don't see the appeal of keeping Raul Jimenez. And I do think at some point soon, he's not scoring goals. We could see Moniz get a nod at some point. And if it is going to be a game, it's probably not Arsenal or Liverpool. So maybe it is like the Brighton game midweek. I could see that happening. So yeah, I just don't think I want to hold on to Raul Jimenez any longer. And I'd say it's with a heavy heart that I'm saying goodbye to Erling Haaland, but it's not. I mean, the man has ruined my season. I can't believe... I'm going to give myself some massive... I can't believe I'm ranked in the top 1 million with how badly Haaland's gone. Didn't own Haaland for any of those points in the first 5 or 6 game weeks. Brought him in Game Week 7. I wasted my triple captain on him. He's been absolutely awful. I captained him last week as well when Salah... Or no, what was it last week? When Salah played against Villa and he got the 14-pointer. Haaland has been disastrous for me. I don't even want to count the amount of points that I've lost getting the Haaland timing wrong, which probably means he's going to go on a great period now. But like I said, I think even if Haaland's returning, let's say he gets 9 points against Liverpool, I kind of back my combination that I'm going to bring in ahead of him. And this is what's frustrating, is that was the justification in Game Week 1, is that I don't think Haaland will blank. And I tried explaining this, but people didn't get it. But I never expected Haaland to blank at the start of the season. He had Ipswich at home in Game Week 2. I knew that would be painful. But the idea was that because he's so expensive, in combination, the other players that you select will do better. And over the first 12 game weeks, that has proved to be absolutely true, especially given that he's struggling for form. So, yeah, let's see how it goes. Listen, if I sell Haaland and it goes horribly and I want him back, then I bring him back in. And you just have to save up a few free transfers to do it. But as of right now, there is no justification to keep the man in the team. If his next 5 fixtures were really good, I would absolutely do it. I don't use past points or past performances as the best predictor for future stuff. But given the fixtures aren't that great either over the next 5, I just think I can do better with the money. So yeah, I wouldn't say I'm 100% committed to selling Haaland, but I'd say it's as high as like 98, 99%. So that's the team. To recap, the defence needs a little bit of surgery at some point, but I don't think that needs to be this week. The midfield and attack I'm not too unhappy with, but if I were to select 3 players that I'd like to sell, and I do have 3 free transfers, it's Haaland, Dibbling, and Raul Jimenez. So with that in mind, let's take a look at my watch list and then what my planned transfers are at this early stage. So guys, let's take a look at my updated watch list. And in all honesty, it's very, very similar to my watch list from last week. In defence, I am probably looking at trying to take some money out of the defence if I do end up selling Rico Lewis. Not that I desperately need it right now if I end up selling Haaland, but I just think it does make a lot of sense. Although, someone like Gvardiol is on my mind. Even with the fixtures, he was so attacking against Spurs. He should have probably had at least 1 or 2 assists in that game. So if I do have the money at some point, I do have my eye on him. I'm also looking at someone like Saliba as well. So they are on my mind, but I keep telling myself that they'd have to do a hell of a lot for me to really want to spend that much money in defence. I've already got Gabriel in there, who I can start every week. I feel like I'd rather rotate some cheaper options. And the 3 players still on my watch list are Van Hecke, Colwill, and Hall. I do like Gusto as well. I think he missed out due to illness in Game Week 12, so I wouldn't stress too much about that. But these 3 just offer nice value. They rotate fairly well with my players that I already own. Van Hecke's probably the one I'd want to go for, because the weeks that I need a defender, he's just got great fixtures. And to bring in a defender in the week that you bring him in as Southampton at home is quite a nice entry point. Hall has obviously Crystal Palace away going into Liverpool at home. It doesn't feel like the best entry point for him. And I am still something about me is just slightly hesitant that he might miss the odd game. I say this now, I've not seen Monday Night Football. He's probably going to get an assist and a clean sheet, and I'll be clamouring to get Hall into my team. But yeah, I do really like him. He's probably the most exciting of the 3 picks. And then finally, Colwill, really boring. Gusto would probably be more exciting, and it would give me a double up on the Chelsea defence, so I'm probably less keen. So as of right now, if I was to make a defender transfer, it would be Rico Lewis to Van Hecke or to Lewis Hall, but I'm not really committing to doing that right now. In the midfield, it's the same players on the list. At the cheaper price, we're looking at Semenyo, but of course he is going to miss Game Week 13 due to the 5 yellow cards. That's probably good for owners. I know it's a nice fixture that he's missing now, but just get out the way. You've not got it hanging over you. And especially if you're looking to buy him soon, because the fixtures are good for Bournemouth, we now know that we don't have that risk associated with him. So he's on my watch list from Game Week 14 and beyond. If I need a cheap player, Semenyo is probably the one I'll still be going for. I do like Matoma. He's obviously a little bit more expensive. He got on the score sheet. It was his 5th attacking return in Game Week 12 for the season, that is, of course. 2 goals and 3 assists. So I like him. He doesn't feel as talismanic as he did under De Zerbi. He feels a little bit more like a system player for Hertzler, but his minutes have been so good. Like when all of the other players have been rotated, Matoma just keeps slapping in like 85-minute plus games. So I like that a lot going into the busy period. The player that I'm really eyeing up is actually Anthony Gordon. I've not yet seen Monday Night Football. Maybe Harvey Barnes will perform really well again, but Gordon's minutes are good. I like what I'm seeing from Newcastle at the moment. And with their fixtures coming up, especially from 15 and beyond, I just think that Gordon's a player that he might be at a tricky price point, but Mbeumo to Gordon I could be eyeing up. I'm also eyeing up potentially Jared Bowen in for Mbeumo. I just need to see a little bit more from West Ham. So again, on Monday night, if Jared Bowen looks good, something like Mbeumo to Bowen could be nice. And then really, it's those 2 more expensive players in Bruno and Saka. Again, I created this graphic before the Man United Ipswich game. Watching that, I wasn't very impressed with Bruno Fernandes in this Amorim system in the first half. In the second half, he did a lot more, but that was when he was dropped into that Eriksen role. I don't know, and I think, in fact, I'm pretty sure he won't play the Eriksen role, and I say Eriksen role, one of the 2 central midfielders, on a consistent basis. It will be Mainu and Ugarte, you'd imagine. And in that more attacking role, he's obviously been told by Amorim not to roam. He's been told not to stroll around the pitch like he used to. So he was almost just stood there, just waiting to receive the ball, but he wasn't getting it. In the first half, he only had 22 touches. To put that into perspective, Dalot had 40, Eriksen had over 30, Garnacho had 19. Could you imagine a game under any other manager where Bruno touches the ball the same amount as Garnacho? He just wasn't really getting on the ball. So I didn't see a lot of what I liked from Man United, but also Bruno. And we know that the fixtures do run out soon. So it probably is Bukayo Saka. And with Ødegaard back, Arsenal were just free-flowing. They looked so good against a Forest team that have been so impressive. So Saka's probably the one at that more expensive price. Heung-min Son had another early sub. Just wasn't that impressed with Son in comparison to some of the other Spurs players. He's just not for me at the moment. De Bruyne and Foden, there's no interest there. City are really struggling. I don't know about either of their minutes. So it is really, if I'm looking to bring in a more expensive midfielder, which I can afford to, probably Bukayo Saka. And then the forward position's an interesting one, right? Obviously, at the cheaper price, I am looking no further than João Pedro. Absolute monster. Goal and assist 2 weeks in a row. Hertzler just loves him. He's been speaking so highly of his leadership abilities and his performances on the pitch and his ability to make a difference. João Pedro is that guy. I want him in my team. Penalties, cheap price, minutes will be good. I know he came off in the 64th minute. It's just to give him a bit of a rest. They were 2-0 up and he'd already got a goal and an assist. I wouldn't be too stressed about that. Could he miss the midweek game in Game Week 14? He absolutely could, yeah, but it's probably still worth it at that price. So yeah, João Pedro's like a lock for me to come in this week. I just really want him. So it then comes down to Isak Watkins-Jackson if I'm looking to bring in a more expensive forward. And I still think that Isak is the standout. I need to see how he gets on Monday. But for me, without seeing that performance, it's difficult to look beyond Isak. The penalties, the talismanic nature, the data's always good. The fixtures are there. I just like everything I see. Whereas with Watkins and Jackson, neither of them are on penalties. Watkins could take a penalty, by the way, as Tielemans missed one. But I'd imagine Tielemans takes again, or it'll be McGinn or Rodgers, because Watkins just doesn't have a good penalty record. So he's not on penalties. I also think they're a bit hit and miss, Aston Villa, and that worries me. And then for Jackson, same issue that I don't know that he starts the midweek game. I could quite easily see him benched against Southampton in game week 14, and he's on 4 yellow cards. So unless Isak really stinks it up, I do think that he's still the standout for me. But then it's Palace away, which is okay, then Liverpool. And I just think it's probably, again, not the best entry point. Could I maybe go for an Ollie Watkins for the next 3 weeks, where after Chelsea, he's got Brentford at home and Southampton at home? So yeah, there's some consideration across all 3 of those more expensive forwards. Solanke's not really in my thinking. I've not been very impressed. But João Pedro is definitely probably a lock for me to come in this week. So there we go. That's my Game Week 13 watch list. Let's now take a look at my actual transfer plans and how the team would line up if I make those transfers. So if you've been following along and actually listening, then you'll know exactly what transfers I'm currently planning. And by the way, if you're still watching at this point, can I please ask you to consider subscribing and dropping a like on the video? It really supports, and I always forget to actually actively ask you. So please do make sure to like the video and make sure to subscribe as well. So these are the 3 transfers that I'm currently planning, which will give me about 1.3 million in the bank. There will be price changes this week, but because I have that flexibility, even if I end up losing 0.3, 0.4, I'm going to wait, because you just never know what might happen. And I'm just not a fan of early transfers. I never have been and I never will be. But the 3 players that, like I said, I'd like to take out are probably Haaland, Dibbling and Raul Jimenez. And if I do Haaland out, I can just afford whatever I want in all of these roles. So Haaland to any striker in the league. So at the moment, it's Isak, Jackson and Watkins. Dibbling can then go all the way up to Saka. And then I've got plenty of money in the bank to do Raul Jimenez. I think I've got up to like 7.2 million. So I can't afford another one of Isak, Jackson, Watkins. But that doesn't matter because I want João Pedro in my team. So if you were to force me to make a set of moves right now, if I go back to my team, it would be Haaland to Isak, Dibbling to Saka, and Raul to João Pedro, which leaves me with this team. So it would be Sanchez in goal, 8 Nuri, Gabriel, and then one of Vandenberg or Leif Davis. So I have that option there to start either of them. The midfield 4 would be very template, but it would be Saka, Mbeumo, Palmer, and Salah, which looks a lot stronger now. And then a front 3 of João Pedro, Cunha, and Isak, which then means that now on a consistent basis, I have a much better 8th attacker. This week, I bench Rodgers. Next week, I'll be honest, horrible benching headache. It's probably, I mean, it's either Isak against Liverpool, probably, or Mbeumo against Villa away, or I just bench Rodgers against Brentford at home. So this is going to cause benching headaches. But I do think going into the busy period, I think that's just a better position to be in. I'd rather have a benching headache than have no bench in the weeks that I need it. It just feels a lot stronger sat there with Rodgers as my first sub now. This team then, whilst it is moving closer to what I think is the more template structure, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's the template for a reason. That 8 attacker situation is really nice. And also, Saka, Mbeumo, Palmer, Salah, Isak, Cunha, João Pedro are all penalty takers. So with this setup, I'll own 7 penalty takers, with Rodgers being the only attacker that's not on penalties. So it is just really, really strong. It uses all of my transfers. It means I don't have a transfer to use on the defence, but I don't think that's a massive issue. And I just think this sets me up really well. And if I look at how nailed these players are, Saka, Mbeumo, Salah, Palmer, Isak and Cunha are all basically 90-minute men. And then João Pedro and Rodgers are both very likely to start most games, and they might get the odd early sub. But going into the busy period, I just feel very safe with 6 players in my team that are definitely going to start almost every game and play most of the minutes as well. So those are the 3 planned transfers at the moment. I'm not going to say I'm locked because so much can change between now and then, but assuming no further issues crop up and there are no issues with the players that I'm looking at bringing in, I see very little reason to not execute these 3 free transfers. And if I want to, I can take a hit for a defender. Like, I don't have to stop there, but I just think I don't mind Vandenberg against Leicester at home or Davis against Forest away. And defenders are just so unpredictable and they just don't normally follow through. Like, you would have much rather had a Man United defender against Ipswich, but they did very little. So there's no saying for sure that the defender that I bring in, no one's got that much of a standout fixture that I would definitely back them to outscore either one of those. So I feel like I would rather but avoid taking a hit. And then in game week 14 or probably game week 15, I would then look to probably use a transfer then. It would depend on if 8 Nuri picks up his booking in game week 13 or not, as to whether I feel like I have to make that in game week 14. And remember, game week 14 is, of course, a midweek deadline. So it might be that it comes thick and fast enough that I'm forced into it, or I decide to just make it in 15. But we can decide that as and when. I do feel like selling Haaland is the best play now. And I might have missed the boat. I should have probably done it a few weeks ago rather than rejigging the funds to try and keep Haaland, Salah and Palmer. I probably should have just sold Haaland. But there's a lot of hindsight there. I loved the idea. Like, not many people with their structures had the ability to bring in Salah whilst keeping Haaland. So it felt like a nice differential play. He's got 2 goals from 8xG. So like I said, there's a lot of hindsight there. It hasn't worked out. But now for me is the time to sell him. I'm sacrificing too much every week by having that money in one spot. So let me know what you think of the team now after the 3 free transfers. Let me know if you do anything differently. Honestly, Saka and João Pedro feel very locked. It's actually that Isak spot. Do I take a bit more of a cheeky pump for the next 2 when I don't actually love the fixtures for Isak? Or do I just make sure he's in place? Because from 15 and beyond, Brentford, Leicester and Ipswich, I'm going to want him then. So I feel like I should maybe just save the transfer. I'll leave it there. Let me know what you think down below. So guys, there you have it. Those are my Game Week 13 transfer plans. Let me know what you think of my plans down below and let me know what you're planning as well. If you have enjoyed today's video, please make sure you smash that like button. And if you've got to this point and you're not yet subscribed, please do consider doing so. Until next time, thank you very much. Bye-bye.